and welcome to another episode of Tomes and Tunes. This is your friendly, maybe neighborhood songwriter, Arielle Silver. I am broadcasting from my little she shed in my Los Angeles backyard. I am an East Coaster, now living on the West Coast, and one of the things that came out of COVID time when we were all in lockdown, that initial quarantine that lasted for a year or more, depending on where you lived. One of the things that happened is that not only did music venues close and we all sequestered in our little she sheds or in our homes in our separate corners of the world, but also we songwriters were not bumping into each other. We weren't going to the open mics. We weren't passing each other in the green room, behind the scenes, getting into sound checks and after hours and, the conferences. Everything went online. And so right at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, well, I really want to talk with my fellow songwriters. And somehow, just magically, in the very first episode of this show, we naturally started talking about books, and that was the beginning of Tomes and Tunes. We are now in episode 95, 95 episodes. If you tuned in last week, I'm so sorry I had to cancel last week's episode at the last minute and fly to the East Coast for a funeral. And I'm just grateful that everything is flexible, right? We'll talk maybe a little bit about all of that stuff in today's show, but I'm really excited to bring on my guest, who is a California-based songwriter, also from the East Coast. Her name is Gail Dreifus. Super excited to finally talk with Gail, and I'm going to bring her on right now. Hi,
Hi there.
Gail.
Hi,
So
I am
happy to hear you.
so great to be here. Thank you.
I am really glad to have you. And we had some technical snafus at the beginning, all on my side. You were absolutely perfect, like an old pro. I'm like, wait, who's hosting this show? You.
I had a little help from my downstairs friend. Yeah.
Yeah, we like those downstairs friends. Well, thank you for being on the show. And oh my gosh, we had so many great conversations just now as we were sound checking and, just trying to sort through those tech snafus. I'm not even sure where to begin, but maybe I'll just start with, let's just start with your son's bar. So
Okay.
you live in Yosemite, and I'm not as much interested. Well, I'm kind of interested in the bar, to be honest. But what I'm really interested in is what we were talking about just before we went live, about being a woman performer, songwriter, and women. I took 10 years off in the middle of my career. I didn't think I was going to return, but when I decided to return, it felt super urgent, and I think you can understand that feeling yourself, right?
I can. And okay, my son has a bar in Mariposa where I live. And he gets a lot of great musicians coming in and out, and I get to watch. And there was a time, okay, the bar had to shut for a while, but I was the one bringing the sound system on. And some of them were like, "You're Nate's mother?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah, but it's my sound system." And they were just like,
Yeah.
so I got a bit of like, first of all, you're an older woman with a sound system schlepping. So, and it's something,
You're the sound guy.
I'm the schlepper.
You're
Yeah.
the slepper.
And I do play out, and it is something that I'm passionate about, but I'm also really passionate about women playing out and also older women.
Yeah.
And there are so many, but they're not as many as younger and younger men is what I'm finding.
Yeah.
So I just,
Why do you think that is?
well, pandemic, first of all, okay, that shut
Sure.
everybody down. Maybe it's getting tired of, I don't want to be in a bar. I would rather be playing in, more of a coffee house situation, a place where people listen, or I'm just like, some people have done it for so long, they're just kind of done.
So you're talking specifically about the moment right now. You're seeing more men getting out
I
than
am
women
seeing
getting
more
out.
men, and it could be where I live. It could be, I'm in a little hick town in Mariposa. You're in the big city. I don't know what it's like there. I mean, um, the big city. So I just really appreciate when I see women of all ages
Yeah.
getting out with their songs, their original songs, or doing covers or whatever, but taking their passion, getting on a stage or whatever. And
Do you feel that before the pandemic you were seeing a 50-50
I
generally
never,
gender parity, or you
I
weren't paying
wasn't.
attention?
I wasn't paying as close, but I wasn't.
You were not
I
seeing,
wasn't
you
seeing
were still seeing a
50-50.
disparity.
How about
Okay.
you? Do you see that?
Absolutely. I think that I mean I left also music, and I when I came back to performing as a singer-songwriter, recording, you know, just participating in this in this industry, in this community, what I found was that I started bumping into some of my fellow women songwriters who I had known back in my 20s when I had originally been doing this before I took this break. And at first I thought that they had been doing this the whole time. And I thought, gosh, I'm so behind. Like everybody has been working on their careers and making music and building building audiences and moving forward. And I stepped off that carousel, and now I'm stepping back on, and I thought, wow, I'm such a newbie. But when I started having conversations, particularly with people on this show, some of those women have been guests on this show. What I learned was that a lot of them, if not nearly all of them, had left music in their after their 20s. And some of them are coming back, like me, and some of them are not coming back yet, or maybe never will. I think a lot of women leave whether or not they have children. I think that baby question is a huge piece of, it's a, I'm just going to say it's a disruptor, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but just as a fact. Like it disrupts another thing that's happening.
Well, I know for a fact having two kids, it was difficult
Yeah.
and it slowed me down, although I did a lot of kids' music, and I brought my son and my daughter with me when they were
Yeah.
young, and I put masks on them and whatever, and they were part of the shtick. So, that was an easier thing than
That's pretty
playing at
awesome.
night
Yeah.
in a coffee house or a bar. I was in parks and
Right.
schools and stuff.
So
So
you didn't leave music, but you changed the kind of music that you were doing.
pretty much I did. I always kept writing though, kids music, and I hate to say adult music, but
Different demographic though. I mean, different like ears,
it
right?
is.
Like, I mean, even when I was a kid, I was listening to, I guess, what you'd call adult music, but I think a lot of kids are not listening to the kind of music I was listening to when I was a kid.
So I did change that up, and and I was also kidding you before. I was like, when I was playing the kids' music, nobody's saying, "Hey, come play here for beer and
Tips.
tip jar." It's here's a paycheck.
Yeah.
Schools supported it. I played in Yosemite a lot and did CDs for other national parks, and I was able
Yeah.
to kind of find my niche there. And so now after pandemic, I have my first gig out in a while Saturday, so I'm
That's
pretty
so
excited.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. Are you getting paid in beer and tips? I mean, that's kind of a nosy question, but
I'm
what
actually
is happening there?
okay. I'm actually doing this with my partner. We're forming a duo, and it's a fundraiser for Sierra Conservancy, which is a really important
Yeah.
part of my town. So it's a good way to step off the cliff, do your first gig, and it's a fundraiser. And I
Yeah.
firmly believe in them. So
So that's pretty awesome. You're doing good. You're able to do your proper work, which is working as an artist, and also your advocacy. That's pretty cool.
I'm excited about
Yeah.
that.
Maybe this is a good time for a song.
Okay. Okay.
What are you going to play for us today?
I'm going to play a song called Choice. And you'll probably understand why I chose this one to play. This is one I wrote about, I would say, 6 weeks ago. Cold steel, eyes closed, heart heard, second slow. Young girl thankful for a vote in a courtroom years ago. Lay back, feet up, hard bed, morning long. At least there's a choice. Now we have a choice, or this might have gone so wrong. Memories, dark alley secrets, pay with cash, pay in sorrow, blood money on your knees. Years later, justice turned, questions asked again. What do you own? What is yours? Is it mine? Will there be a choice? We march, we stand, we speak for rights again. Years trying to change the minds of man. Who holds the future of women's needs? Personal decisions. Who will take the lead? Cold steel, eyes closed, an uncomfortable room. I'm not ready for a child, not ready, it's too soon. On a bed, hard and cold, is she safe? She is strong. At least there's a choice. At least there's a choice. We must own the freedom. Own the freedom to choose.
Thank you. So you said you wrote that 6 weeks ago, not this week.
Not this week, no. I was given a prompt that I had to write. I'm in a small songwriting group, and the prompt was write a political song. And I generally don't write political songs. And I was like, okay, what am I passionate about? So I wrote that song, and here we are today.
Yeah, I feel I've been thinking this week about this. We're talking about the Supreme Court. Some people are going to listen as this show is actually happening, and some people are going to listen to the show long after, at some
Right.
point in the future, right? So this is the week that the Supreme Court brief was leaked about the Roe v. Wade case, and rescinding those constitutional rights that women have had for the last 50 years. And my sweetheart is really angry about this. And for me, I was standing in the kitchen this morning, and I was thinking, why do I not feel this fire in me right now? And I think it's because you cannot live your whole life on fire, burning your right. And I think that for myself, I'm still trying to figure out as a songwriter and as a storyteller and as a as a public speaker, how to address issues that are of deep importance and and value systems, how to approach those things. So here you are bringing this song onto the show, and it's a beautiful, your voice sounds beautiful. The
Thank you.
song, like from a songwriting standpoint, I love the fragments of, just like flash, 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 like really pithy, um, just just imagery, 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 right? And it's a very powerful song.
Thank you. It was one, I debated, should I do this song or not? And I'm like, yes. I Part of my passion is that I'm a creator director of Yosemite Songwriting Retreat, and we have an opening concert. And I wrote this song right before then, and I usually do the song I'm working on because I want people to feel like this is why we're here. I'm not going to do this polished song,
Right.
but I didn't do that for our opening concert because I wanted it to be lighter and happier than here's
Yeah.
my one song for the weekend. But I feel like it's important as a songwriter to write these songs
Yeah.
and question and talk about the feelings around them. So that's why I chose this today.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. So you said that the prompt was to write a political song, and this was the topic that you chose.
Yes.
Women's rights to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Wha- I feel like that's such a commonly used phrase, women's right to choose. But allowing us to have ownership of our bodies, right? And
Or
be
the ownership.
self-directed
Yeah, the ownership to make a choice. That's
in the same way that other people do. Other people being men. But I'm curious from a craft standpoint about this song. So you had your prompt as a political song. What was the entry point though for you with this song? How did you get into? Does that make sense?
like how did it come to me?
There's always a first phrase or word or sound or melody. There's always some seed that starts a song on its path, right? Like that first step. What was that? Do you remember when you were writing the song what that seed was at the very beginning?
To me, that seed was imagining somebody in a situation where what if they don't have a choice and place them cold steel. Like I wanted just to give images.
Yeah.
And I actually, because I was, okay, about this prompt political songs. My first song I ever wrote when I was 13 was a political song, and I haven't written any since. I've written songs about ecology, that's political, but not like this. And I woke up at like 3 in the morning and went, scribble, scribble next to me, and I just used my imagination what it would be like for a person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you imagined a scene.
I
You
did. I
imagined,
imagined
like,
the scene.
a picture or a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned environmental justice as being political, but a little different, right? That it does feel, when you said that, I was like, yeah, there's this feeling of, for people who are passionate about environmental justice and understand the relationship between environmental issues and climate change and social justice, because, of course, the most vulnerable of the population is always the first that is susceptible to, you know, drastic disasters, right? But it feels to me like what you said was true, that for people who are passionate about it, they can be passionate, and then other people are indifferent. Whereas the question of pro-choice or anti-choice movements, I don't think that many people are indifferent, or there's a lot of ire.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So bravo, because to write a song like that and to perform it takes courage because it opens up the possibility of attack. It opens you up to attack. And
that's true.
and that's what the topic is about anyway. Right.
Right. And I just figured today I'm going to sing this song.
Good for you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, getting up in front of people and singing, opening your mouth and singing anything takes an immense amount of courage. Um, yeah, I bow to you. Well done. Well done with the
Thank you.
song and the performance.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about Yosemite Songwriting Retreat. And you guys just had, I think you had a retreat very
We
recently.
did. We had our fourth virtual retreat.
Your fourth virtual. We were only in lockdown for about 2 years, so you did two each of those years, or did this
We
start
did. We did
before?
two each of those years. And generally, we used to do one a year. It would be in October. And we had to cancel the last live one because of the pandemic.
Right.
So we just decided, okay, let's regroup. Let's go virtual. And it was a success. There was a community that was created still and carried on. And we had people from all over, like many online retreats. And Yosemite Songwriting Retreat still has an open mic every Wednesday night. So we have people, we have the Canadians, they come every Wednesday night. It's very sweet. And it's been a great way to meet new people from all
Yeah.
over. So Yosemite Songwriting Retreat started 10 years ago. And it was sort of a whim of like, okay, I really want to do this. And I had no idea 10 years later I'd still be doing this. And some of my closest friends are people that have come to Yosemite Songwriting Retreat. So it's been really great. We've had some pretty awesome instructors.
Yeah.
And we do recording there, mentor sessions, open mics, instruction. It's a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome.
So
That
I'm
sounds
just
great.
gearing up right now for year 10 in October.
I've been leading yoga retreats since 2016 with my sweetheart. We both teach yoga, and there I feel like the easiest way to like, we call them yoga retreats, but really they're yoga and creativity retreats. They're focused on, they draw people from all different types of arts, and it's always a really powerful weekend. So I can imagine what Yosemite Songwriting Retreat is like. Just a group of songwriters, all people from the same art, working on their work, doing their work.
So when I started this, I really didn't have a mission. You know, it was just let's see what happens. But one thing I was really strong about is leave your ego at the door.
Yeah.
And let's really focus, create, and support each other.
Very hard.
It's hard, but it's happened. And
Yeah. And I feel like once people have the opportunity to do that, to leave their ego at the door, it gets easier to leave their ego at the door, right? It starts to become maybe like a coat that they notice that they're wearing, and they start to learn to take it off. And then at some point, maybe learn that they don't even need to put it on. But sometimes the first opportunity for them to do that is a situation like what you're talking about.
leave your ego at the door and also try to leave your fear someplace else as well,
they're
because
so related,
that,
right?
they are. And I'm just really happy that YSR has taken on this life of its own. And I just kind of, you know, get the instructors, get the people, and then when everybody's there, it's like,
Yeah.
it really works.
So beautiful. So the online one, what would you say the benefits of having it online, now that you will probably have a choice to do one or the other, what would you miss if you could only do it in person? What would you miss about the online retreat?
The first of all, the cost of travel is really high,
Yeah.
and I like the fact that online Yosemite Songwriting Retreat can be cheaper
Yeah.
because there's not a venue involved,
Yeah.
and so I give out a lot of scholarships, and because I don't want this retreat just to be for people that can just afford this. I'd like to
Yeah.
really make sure it's open. So the online was great because the cost was down and people came from all over, and and maintained friendships that might not have happened.
Yeah.
So that part's really great. There's also sometimes people were just saying, I'm so like first timers, kind of, or first time people. I've had people that have never performed before,
Yeah.
and they felt a little safer in their own space and Zoom box,
Oh, yeah.
so that part's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also, just from a practical point of view, I've had teachers from the East Coast fly out, but now, price of travel and all, I've really tried to get a lot of East Coast teachers doing the online
Yeah.
because it doesn't involve a plane ticket.
Speaking of plane tickets, I
Plane
think
ticket, perfect.
they're on this plane right now. Well, let me ask that question the other way then. Let's flip it. If you could never do an in-person retreat again, only do online, what would be missed? What is great about an in-person?
Jamming
Oh,
and playing together and actually hugging each other. And even though online has a sense of community, is different than waking up and having breakfast with somebody
yeah.
and sharing a meal and getting into a person's life. And
So there's the comfort and the accessibility that you get from the online retreat. And then there's the three-dimensional, 3D sensory experience and that je ne sais quoi that we just get from being in community in person. And
It's
they
so
both have
true.
their upsides and their downsides.
They do. And so this is why we're going to have one live one a year and one online.
Love it.
So best of all worlds.
Yeah. Love it. And maybe this is a good time to segue into books because
Okay.
because that was an actual really awkward segue. But I was just thinking, music and books and all of these things that we share together. So what is it? What in general? You shared with me behind the scenes what book you're going to share today, and I want you to share that. But first, in general, what you said that you used to be an English teacher.
I did. I taught in this little one-room schoolhouse in El Portal, which is right outside of Yosemite National Park. And I taught everything but math and science. So I was generally teaching all grades of English.
All grades being
Oh, I'm 7th through 12th.
Okay.
Okay. So that was my job: English, history, driver's ed,
Oh,
PE, art. I mean, we had to
literally
do
everything.
literally everything.
Did you also teach music?
Well, I used music in my classes a lot. They had a band teacher, but if the kids didn't want band, they had to take ukulele with me. There was no getting out of it. And I also had a uke club in school, but I wasn't. I didn't
I'm
teach.
so smitten with this corner of California that I've never been to, just from hearing your stories. I'm like, this
Oh,
sounds
you
like
you just have to
I mean,
come.
it sounds like the best place ever, and I think maybe it's like you would probably create all of these wonderful things wherever you went.
Well, I don't know about
But
that, but thank you. But it was. I taught for 18 years, and It was quite the teaching experience because my original teaching was on the East Coast and in a sort of a normal type of school where the students didn't call me Gail, they called me Miss Dreifus, so it was different. And this school, I really got to know my kids. They got to know me. And we were like a family with the best of it and also the most irritating parts of it. Yeah.
So you taught all these subjects, but I feel like the literature part was a part that you were more passionate about than the other subjects, or is that just because this is Tomes and Tunes and I'm sort of biased toward books?
I really like the history and I really like the literature and I put them together a lot, along with music. So Grapes of Wrath, we're studying Woody Guthrie, so that's that. But my book is completely different than that.
Yeah. Okay. So now tell us about
Ta-da!
this.
Okay, I have a hard time sleeping. So what would be better than having somebody read to you? Okay, I'm still getting this book.
The
And
Road
it's
in Storyland.
Land. Yeah, and it's a 1930s book.
What? Who is this by?
Well,
It's a beautiful cover.
It's Star Edition, isn't it? Oh, the illustrations are pretty amazing, and
Is it a collection of stories?
it's a
or is it
collection of stories.
Okay.
It's edited. It's a collection, and we have like the rooster and the fox, the pine tree and its needles, the cap that mother made. There's just little sweet stories. I'm still trying to figure out like.
Oh, they're beautiful. The
Isn't that gorgeous?
illustrations. Yeah.
So that is the book, and my sweetie brought this into my life, going, okay.
I was going to ask you where this book came from. Okay.
His mother read to him stories from this book, and I was like, I love being read to. So he bought the book, and we read to each other.
Oh, lovely. So you do that and it helps you to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bedtime story.
It's a bedtime story. Very different, I'm sure, than most of the other books that are brought to you on Thursdays.
I feel like a couple of people have brought in books from their childhood, but
Oh,
not a book
okay.
like this. I think we had A Wrinkle in Time a while
Okay,
back.
mhm.
That was quite some time ago. Gosh. And I'm trying to think if there were other, books that people had read and loved as a child. But this is a book that you didn't know as a child.
I
and that
didn't. I mean, I knew some of these stories, and originally David bought it for my granddaughter, and I was like, "Wait a minute, how? Let's read this." And
Yeah.
he reads to me, I read to him, and it's a really nice way of going to bed. It's really sweet.
Will you read a little bit of it?
Sure.
But you have to show us the pictures too.
Okay.
Apologies to those who might just be listening to the show without the visuals.
Okay. I just picked one. I mean, they're so random. Okay. So here's.
Oh, other way.
You would
Yeah,
think
there-
you would think dyslexic here.
the camera is confused.
Yes.
Okay. So that's an image of
A rabbit.
okay, a rabbit. There are trees. We're in a
Yes.
forest.
Trees
Okay.
in a forest, mice. Okay, so I'll just start the little bit for you. How Little Bunny Rabbit Caught the Sun. Little Bunny Rabbit lived on the edge of the woods. He had a cozy little home at the roots of a tall, strong tree. Grandmother Rabbit lived with Little Bunny Rabbit and kept house for him. Every morning, Little Bunny Rabbit took his bow and arrows and hopped away into the woods to hunt. Every evening he came home with carrots, lettuce, and skins. Grandmother Rabbit cooked some of the carrots for dinner, and some she hid away. Winter days would come. Then Little Bunny Rabbit would find no vegetables. She dried the skins and stored them away. They would make warm furs for the winter. One night, Little Bunny Rabbit came home with a big bag full of carrots and skins slung over his shoulder. But Little Bunny Rabbit was cross. Grandmother Rabbit, he said, I get up early every morning to hunt in the woods, but someone always gets there ahead of me. Should we, do you want more? Do you want...
The way that you're reading the word bunny rabbit, little bunny rabbit, reminds me of is it a Tom Paxton song? I don't want a bunny wunny in my Widow Will boat.
Yes.
Widow Will boat on the pond. Because the bunny might be crazy and it'll bite me in the throat in the Widow Will boat on the pond.
So anyway, it's a charming little book, but it's amazing what was written in the 1930s, and some of these would not be written today. It's a bit the wording it would not be what we would do today, but anyway, that's
Well, that was 90 years ago. So,
it was.
I think that, culture changes, right?
Culture does change, yeah.
And I'm assuming that there are some insidious stereotypes that might
Yes,
enter
there
into
are.
the narrative from that time.
You got it.
Right, okay. Yeah. Oh man, that could just go into a whole other conversation. Thank you, though. That looks like a beautiful book.
It is a really
Do you know who the
beautiful book.
illustrator was?
Let me look. I should have checked this out before. There's 3 other books. Cecile W. and H.C. Halling. Yep. And it's the Platt and Monk Company Incorporated are the publishers. But I mean, okay. Look at this picture. It's just so,
The colors are so vibrant.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Now, other than that book, to help you sleep, what do you generally like to read? So I know you taught Grapes of Wrath and To Kill a Mockingbird, and you read this to go to sleep. But what about you as just a book, as a reader?
This was a great book, All About Love by Bell Hooks.
Yes, I have that on my shelf. Yeah.
That book was instrumental in the pandemic and refinding love for me.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really appreciative about
Wow.
to have read this book, yeah. And I'm also reading I'm Your Man, The Life of Leonard Cohen.
Okay.
Yeah, and Leonard Cohen, the song Suzanne when I was 13 was the song that got me passionate about learning to play guitar.
It's a beautiful song. Had you played guitar before that, or
No,
you heard the song and
I
you were
heard
like,
the song and I'm
wanna
like, okay, what do I do now? I want to play guitar.
So how did you learn? How did you learn what he was doing?
I saved up $12, went to the Goodwill store, bought a guitar, and then, oh gosh, there wasn't YouTube.
No.
It was a book. I just got like a chord book and listened to the record over and over again till I could kind of do it, changing chords, learning finger picking.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. So that's the start of guitar and wanting to sing and Leonard Cohen. So I have not finished this book, but these are the types of books that I read.
So you heard the song Suzanne, you loved the song, you wanted to learn the song, so you saved up your money, you bought a guitar, you bought a songbook, you listened to the record, and you looked at the songbook. And it taught you how to play chords, how to finger pick. Had you played an instrument before that?
I played piano, and I played in 4th grade, I played cello.
That's a big instrument for a small child.
Mm-hmm.
4th grade.
That's why I wanted to play it. Dare to be different,
So how did that learning Suzanne change you in a way that cello and piano didn't? What was it about that?
Because I took classical piano lessons.
So you were learning from the page?
Yeah. And I didn't know, really. I mean, I started at 13, like, you can write your own songs. People, I just, for some reason, when I heard Suzanne and it was written by Leonard Cohen, I was like, maybe I could do something like this.
Like a living person.
Like a living person, yeah. People,
Because you said earlier that your first political song was written when you were 13.
So
and this was right around when you learned Suzanne as well.
That's right.
And so you learned Suzanne, and then something about learning, getting inside the song. Is that
Getting
what it
inside the
was? Like,
song, and also I felt like my guitar was becoming my best friend. And so I'd go home from school and just play, play, play. And I don't even think I can remember the first song I wrote, but it was a song about the Vietnam War.
okay.
Yeah.
What place did piano and cello have? Um, I mean, in retrospect, from your position now, looking back at that guitar situation, learning a song and then writing a song, how did piano and cello figure in? Were they just something completely different and irrelevant, or was there some relationship between having learned cello and piano
Well, the
that
cello
helped you?
I really only played for 2 years. However, I bought a cello maybe 6 years ago, and I thought when I retire from teaching, I'm going to learn to play cello again. Hasn't happened. The retired from teaching has, but the cello hasn't. Piano, I went back to piano, although I'm not a great piano player, and I have written songs on piano. But I had to go the gateway of guitar to start writing songs, and then I took it to piano.
Yeah. It's interesting to me looking back how the dots connect in a way that we wouldn't have seen them at the time. You know, when I played clarinet for from the time I was 7 or 8 until it was on my last album. So, it's right here next to me. um, and for a long time I felt like clarinet was a totally separate world from my world as a songwriter and guitar player. Um, but those foundational musical instruments teach us something,
They do.
teach us a lot.
And then, I was turned on to Joni Mitchell, Laura Nyro, and watching them play piano and write songs was like, wow, there's a whole world out there. But it started with Leonard Cohen, Suzanne, to want to learn to play guitar.
I love that. And I loved that song when I was young. My dad I think he played that song. Maybe he played it on guitar, but a lot of the songs that my earliest songs, the songs that came into my world were usually through my dad, through him playing guitar and singing. But there were some, and I think Leonard Cohen might have been one of them. Possibly he didn't play, but it was just, being played on the stereo at home, the record player or something. Yeah. It's a beautiful song, though.
I didn't have that. I mean, my parents were playing show tunes, which I love, but I think it was some older friends and
Yeah.
got me, and having an older sister turning me on to
Oh, forget
some
it.
music. Yeah.
You lucky people with older siblings to turn you on to music. Life is rough to be the oldest sibling. We've got to find the music, and then we can pass it on. But for folks who had older siblings, there's always that other thing. The older siblings always introduce the younger ones to music. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Shall I share the book that I'm reading right now?
Oh, yeah. I would love to know what you're reading.
So my aunt died last week, and I flew back to Connecticut to attend the funeral. My family is Jewish, and so it was a Jewish funeral and burial, and then the ritual of sitting Shiva for the immediate family. And so we all descended upon the house in Westport, Connecticut, and I was there for a good number of days with them. It used to be that when I lived in Boston and would travel south, there weren't many northern places that I would go from Boston, but my family lived basically from Boston all the way down to Florida, and then I also was performing musician, so I would circle around the region playing shows, and I would always stop in Westport and stay with my aunt overnight. That was always the first thing that happened after I left Boston. It was just drive to Westport, stay over there, and then start the next day or whatever. And whenever I went to her house, my family is a family of book readers, book lovers, and scholars, and there were always lots and lots of books. So I would, I'm just one of those people. It's kind of obnoxious, I think. But when I go to someone's house, if there's a bookshelf that I can see, it's like there's like just this gravitational pull. I end up standing at the bookshelf to see what's on there. And I would go to my aunt's house and she would always say, "Oh, take a book with you when you go." Um, so this past week when I was in Connecticut, she had moved from the house that she lived in for a long, long time. She had moved into a new house at the beginning of 2020, which was also, as we know, the beginning of COVID, which was also the beginning of her illness. It all kind of happened at the same time. And so this house, I don't know where all the books are, but there were some books in this house, and I hope that my cousins don't mind that I swiped one from the shelf, in part because I didn't have a book to read on my trip. I finished it on the plane right there. Um, but also because I just kind of wanted one last book. I just felt like, um, that sort of thing.
Yes.
So I took Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence, um, which I've never read, and she didn't have a lot of books, and I don't know if there had been a bigger selection if I would have chosen this, but maybe that's always the way it is with books. It's like, you pick what you can only read one book at a. I mean, I'm always reading multiple books at a time, but in the actual moment of reading, you can only read one book at a time. Right? It's just one of those things you can't multitask. Um, but I'm kind of surprised that I've never read this book. So when I saw it on the shelf, I thought, well, let's go back in time. And this book was published, I think, in 1918, sometime around there. And it's really nice for me. I'm a fan of classic literature, but I've been steeping in contemporary literature for a little while now. So it's really nice to read, long sentences. You know, somehow sentences have gotten shorter, I think. I want to share a piece. I think this is the piece that I would like to share. Hopefully. Um, so the protagonist is Newland Archer, and this takes place in New York City in post Civil War era, and Newland Archer, at the very beginning of the book, he is engaged to be married to a very appropriate partner. And they're of New York society, and they're doing all the society things that they're supposed to do, all of the, prescribed social outings and announcing of their engagement to the right people at the right time, in the right order, etc., etc. And then there's someone who enters, of course, the scene at the very beginning of the book that is going to create some disarray. And she's already starting to create disarray in his mind. But this passage, I didn't do my homework, so I didn't pick out the right place to start. Where do I start? Oh, let's just start here. So the character who has just been introduced, who's causing some disarray, she is Countess Olenska. She has just left her abusive marriage, which is quite a shock to society, that she should have her own agency and leave her husband. The case of the Countess Olenska had stirred up old settled convictions and set them drifting dangerously through his mind. His own exclamation that women should be free as we are, struck to the root of a problem that it was agreed in his world to regard as non-existent. Nice women, however wronged, would never claim the kind of freedom he meant. And generous-minded men like himself were therefore, in the heat of argument, the more chivalrously ready to concede it to them. Such verbal generosities were in fact only a humbugging disguise for the inexorable conventions that tied things together and bound people down to the old pattern. But here he was pledged to defend, on the part of his betrothed cousin, conduct that, on his own wife's part, would justify him in calling down on her all the thunders of church and state. Of course, the dilemma was purely hypothetical. Since he wasn't a blackguard Polish nobleman, it was absurd to speculate what his wife's rights would be if he were. But Newland Archer was too imaginative not to feel that, in his case and May's, May is his betrothed, the tie might gall for reasons far less gross and palpable. What could he and she really know of each other, since it was his duty as a decent fellow to conceal his past from her, and hers, as a marriageable girl, to have no past to conceal? What if, for someone of the subtler reasons that would tell with them, what if, for some one of the subtler reasons that would tell with both of them, they should tire of each other, misunderstand or irritate each other? He reviewed his friends' marriages, the supposedly happy ones, and saw that none that answered even remotely to the passionate and tender comradeship which he pictured as his permanent relationship with May Wayland. He perceived that such a picture presupposed on her part the experience, the versatility, the freedom of judgment, which she had been carefully trained not to possess. And with a shiver of foreboding, he saw his marriage becoming what most of the other marriages about him were: a dull association of material and social interests, held together by ignorance on the one side and hypocrisy on the other. So, literary style, I like that there can be such a probing, a little bit dense to read, I guess, aloud to someone. But I, without knowing what this book is about, or before I started it, not knowing what it was about, I'm appreciating that it is about this probing of the place of men and women, of their relationships and what society is dictating, and how the patriarchal society is really asking for control of women's behaviors and thoughts.
I haven't read that book, but I'm really interested.
Yeah.
And it is really sweet to take that book off your aunt's shelf, and there's something very lovely about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I feel, grief is a funny thing. So I'm wading through it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, trying to figure it out. And I'm really glad that I took that book as well, for that reason that you mentioned. I love that some of the comments that are happening here in the chat box. So, yay for long sentences. I agree.
Opposite of what I read. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It was polar opposite. And I'm a slow reader, and so I am really I like when books force my attention.
Mm-hmm.
With long sentences, you are forced to focus. And I think that the reason a lot of people perhaps might not want to read long sentences is because our attention spans are trained to shorten in modern era, it seems.
Good pick.
Gail, so enough of the tomes. Would you play us another song?
I would love to.
What are you going to play for us? Tell us a little bit about it.
This song is called Familiar. And I wrote part of this song. You want the backstory? Should I?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course I do.
All right. My mom lived in Philly area, and we were selling her house for her to move to a little house I put on my property in Mariposa. And I was I was walking around the block, kind of memorizing this block because I'd lived in this house since I was 3 years old.
Oh.
So it stretches a bit, but that's what that's what made me write it.
Okay.
Familiar, yeah.
Familiar.
Yeah. So familiar walking down the street, the cracks in the pavement that I know. It's the sign saying children are playing, slow down, yellow means caution, I suppose. Holding into darkness, saying goodbye, tripping over my toes. It's familiar that I sleep at night holding blankets tight. I saw you, did I see you? Where did you go? It's the familiar houses made of brick and wood, as if I should never left you alone. Painting in a studio while Picasso takes a break, mixing colors of my ordinary mistakes. Shades of blue, accents of red, I'm hearing music, which reminds me to sing instead. To sing instead. It's the familiar glance of a stranger that I've seen oh so many times before. When he looked into my eyes, he saw me rich and he pitied the poor. Did I forfeit the times when I should have done so much more? Painting in a studio while Picasso takes a break, mixing colors of my ordinary mistakes. Shades of blue, accents of red, I'm hearing music, which reminds me to sing instead. La da 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 da, to sing instead. It's familiar walking down the street, familiar that I sleep and that I breathe. It's familiar walking down the street, familiar that I sleep and that I breathe. I walk, I breathe, I walk, I breathe. It's familiar. I breathe, I walk, I breathe, I walk, I breathe. I walk, I breathe. Thank you.
I could picture you walking around that block.
Yes.
There were sidewalks where you grew up?
There were sidewalks. Yes, I don't have sidewalks here, but I have sidewalks there. Mm-hmm.
Andre says, "What a lovely
Oh,
song." Gail.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Grab this guy from somewhere behind me. Wait. So you had sidewalks. You probably had traffic lights.
I did.
Yeah.
Sidewalks and traffic lights.
I grew up in a few different places. I'll take us out on this. Whoa, on this song. One of the places I grew up was in northwestern-ish New Jersey, and it was pretty much the farthest place that you would possibly live if one of your parents had to commute to New York City. And if you never saw that parent because they were always commuting. We lived, I think it was a 2-hour commute each direction.
Oh my gosh.
From where we lived. So we lived in the mountains. There were no sidewalks or traffic lights. And my home in New Jersey, we were in the woods, and behind our house there was a lake, and in the summertime you could not see the lake because the trees were fully clothed. And in the winter, of course, they shed their garments, and the lake was right there. It came closer. So I thought, since you played a song of your childhood home, that I would play this song, which is of that home in New Jersey. And this is a song called Bramblevine. I was thinking about a couple of different things. One was that home in New Jersey where we had blackberries growing wild around the house, along with a whole lot of other things. Probably not so different, although different vegetation, different look and everything, but not maybe so different from where you live now. The New Jersey version, maybe.
Right. We have one traffic light in our whole county right here.
Oh, wow. Okay, so not quite. I don't know if you can get that in New Jersey.
All right.
I don't think that's possible. But okay, so the New Jersey version of Yosemite. So the mountains are smaller, there's the ground is wetter, and there are, of course, more people in general. But there you go. But I was also thinking about I'm a baker. I like to make pie. I'm making a pie this weekend because today's my sweetheart's birthday, and of course, pie is the thing that everybody likes around here for birthdays. But I was also thinking about complicated loves, and relationships that a lot of times for me it's family relationships, where there's some love, but it's more complicated than that. It's not just the simple, easy I love you kind of thing. So this is called Bramblevine. Blackberries grew in the thicket north of our yard. In summer we'd pick 'em and come home with stickers and thorns in our arms. Some hours later, when supper was plated and served, we barely remember the pain for the pleasure that went into making dessert. And some kind of love is like that, a sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramblevine, heating time, form a heart from the scraps, like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love is like that. Someone once showed me the best way to work with the dough. Just a few presses, you crimp down the edges, then squeak the old oven door closed, finding a balance to strike between effort and ease. Requires some practice, delicate lattice, you learn it degree by degree. And some kind of love is like that, a sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramblevine, heating time, form a heart from the scraps, like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love is like that. like that. A sweetness buried in a thorny patch. Bramble fine, heat and time form a heart from the scraps. Like making pie from scratch. Some kind of love is like that.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you. Gail, thank you so much for being with me today, for talking and sharing your stories and your songs.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's the highlight to be here. Thank you so much.
I cannot wait for us to see each other more, because now we are both serving together on the board of Folk Alliance Region West.
Which I'm really thrilled about, so we do get to have more time together.
Yeah, and I mean, we bumped into each other initially. The way that we were first acquainted was through one of these online Zoom song circles. So I'm looking forward to many more of those. Yeah.
Me too. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it.
thank you.
So much fun.
Before I let you go, one thing that I'm trying to, one thing that I've realized over this time, I don't know if it has anything to do with COVID and our Zoom calls and all the things that have been online. I'm not sure, but it was during this time that I realized that one of our jobs as songwriters and independent artists is to help people learn how to be great music lovers and great music fans, how to support the arts, and to support what we're doing. And so I'm trying to remember always to ask my fellow songwriters, what is the number one thing that people can do to support you and the work that you're doing in the world? Like, if they were to take one action right now, today, right after this, after they finish listening to this, what would it be?
For me personally, it would be finding a way to make music in your life to bring yourself joy, or share some music with somebody else, be it a kid, be it an aging parent, whomever.
Yeah.
Just putting music on a plate and serving it. It's kind of what I'm thinking, and that's such a great question.
And for them to support you, I know that Yosemite Songwriting Retreat is a
For
huge
me personally,
thing for you.
okay, it would be
But for your music, for you.
for my music, for me, is really supporting Yosemite Songwriting Retreat, the fact that it exists, share, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
Also, I have on Facebook, Gail in Music. I'm coming
Great.
out with a new CD, and
Facebook.com/Gail, Lynne music.
Got it, yeah.
I already, earlier this week, you were like, that's not how my last name is spelled. So you have some tricky names, because
I
every single
know.
one of your names, they sound like, oh yeah, I know
There's
how to
that
spell that
E
name.
thing, you know? Yeah. But I think that's it. And just, I think really my mission as a musician is teaching it, and also sharing songs I love, and listening to other musicians live or on Zoom.
Nothing like it.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah.
like it. I love sitting and listening to, just, someone with a guitar singing a song, and I love having the opportunity to play that way too. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Gail. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah. And I'll see you in the green room for a sophisticated, or maybe not sophisticated, but at least civilized goodbye.
We can make it sophisticated.
We'll
too.
make it sophisticated
Okay.
too. We'll raise our pinky and drink some tea.
There we go. Okay.
All right. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Tomes and Tunes. It has been a delight to have all of my guests on this show, and to keep the conversations going. You can find all the archives on my ariellesilvermusic.com website, on my YouTube channel. And of course, we will be back next week with songwriter Mike Berman, who is a wonderful human being, and I can't wait to have a conversation with him next week. So I hope that you will tune in, same time, same place. And of course, you can catch all the archives if you missed the live show. So until we meet again, please be safe, be happy, find some joy and delight in your life, and shower the people you love with love. Take good care.